At dinner, my dad didn't yell. He didn't say anything mean. He didn't even look uncomfortable. He just said it like it was a rule everyone already knew. "Your sister's family comes first," he said, putting his fork down. "You're always last." My sister smiled a little, not surprised, not embarrassed, maybe even a little happy. The room went quiet, and I felt everyone's eyes looking at me, waiting to see what I would do. The old me might have laughed, paid for something, or tried to fix things. But this time I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I looked at my dad and said, "Good to know." Something inside me changed that night. Not my love for my family, not my heart. After that, I stopped giving them money. I stopped changing my life for problems that weren't mine. So later, when a real family problem came up, and they expected me to help like always, what I did surprised everyone. But before I continue, hit the subscribe button and tell me where are you watching this from, and what time of day is it? My name is Kaylee's. For most of my life, my family called me strong. They said it like it was a good thing. But really it meant I was easy to use. My sister Safira was the center of everything. She had a husband, Caius, and 2 kids. Her life was busy, loud, and always urgent. And then there was me. I had a steady job. I paid my bills on time. I didn't ask for help, so everyone thought I didn't need anything. When Safira had problems, the family rushed to help. My mom, Amara, worried out loud. My dad, Theron, gave advice. Every conversation turned to her problems like magnets. If I talked about my life, it lasted a moment and then disappeared. "How's work?" my mom would ask. "Busy but good," I'd say. "That's nice," she would reply quickly. "Did you hear what Safira is dealing with?" And just like that, I was listening again. I noticed it early, even if I didn't name it. Safira's needs were always noticed. Mine were assumed to be nothing. When she cried, people rushed to help. When I stayed quiet, they thought I was fine. Birthdays showed it clearly. Safira's birthdays were planned with gifts, photos, and parties. Mine were small. "We'll do something simple," my dad would say. Simple always meant small. Family trips were the same. If money was tight, I wouldn't go. "You understand?" my mom would ask. And I always did. By the time I left for college, no one cried when I left. There was no long goodbye. Just a hug in the driveway and my dad saying, "You'll be okay. You always are." I worked. I studied. I paid my own way. Every success I had made them think I didn't need help, because I never asked. Years later, I moved to another city for work. The distance didn't change anything. Calls were short. Updates about my life were listened to, then turned back to Safira. Slowly, without saying it, my role became permanent. I was the backup, the safety net, the one who could handle things. Money left my account quietly, little by little. Just this once, just until next month. No one noticed because I never complained. I told myself it was fine. That's what being mature meant. That love meant giving without counting. But sitting at that dinner table, hearing my dad say I was always last, I realized something. I hadn't just been put there. I stayed there. And for the first time, I wondered what would happen if I didn't. That dinner was supposed to be normal. My dad picked the restaurant. It was quiet, expensive, and nice. We sat in a corner booth. Safira was already talking about her kids, how tired she was, and her husband's work problems. My mom nodded. My dad listened. I waited for a pause so I could talk about my life. I had been promoted at work. More responsibility, more pay. I thought it mattered tonight. When I mentioned it, my mom smiled. "Oh, that's nice, Kaylee's." "Nice." Then Safira said, "You're lucky. At least you don't have all this pressure." My dad leaned back, folded his napkin, and said it. "Safira has a family now. Her family comes first. You're always last." He didn't look at Safira. He looked at me. For a second, I thought I misheard. I looked around. No one laughed. No one tried to make it softer. Safira smiled slightly, like she was used to it. My mom shifted but said nothing. Caius stared at his plate. The silence was heavy. I felt the old urge rise. I wanted to say it was okay. I wanted to smooth things over. But I surprised myself. I nodded and said, "Good to know." My dad frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," I said calmly, "I appreciate you being honest." My mom frowned. "Kaylee's, don't be sensitive." "I'm not," I replied. And for the first time, that was true. The rest of dinner was forced conversation. No one brought it up again, but everything felt different, like a crack had opened under the table. When we left, my dad paid the bill. No drama. No fight. But on the drive home, I kept thinking about his words. "You're always last." Not angry. Not mean. Just certain. That was the moment I understood. My place in the family had never been temporary. It had been permanent. And once it is said out loud, it can't be ignored. By the time I got home, I wasn't upset. I was clear. If I was always last, I needed to stop living for people who expected me to stay there. That clarity didn't make noise, but it changed everything. I didn't wake up with a plan. No dramatic list on my fridge. What I felt was quiet and heavy. If I kept living the same way, nothing would change. So, I started doing the opposite of what I always did. I stopped reacting. A few days later, my mom texted, "Safira is a little overwhelmed this week. Can you check on her?" I read it, put my phone down, and finished my coffee. Not because I didn't care, but because I saw how automatic my old response had been. Of course I'll handle it. I'll make it easier. An hour passed. Nothing happened. The world didn't fall apart. That realization scared me more than my dad's words. I had believed that if I didn't help right away, something terrible would happen. But nothing did. Over the next few weeks, I made small, quiet changes. I opened bank accounts in my name only. I moved my savings. I canceled shared access I never questioned before. It felt strange, almost sneaky, but it was my money. I expected guilt to hit me like a wave. Instead, I felt relief. Not excitement, relief. I had been holding my breath for years without knowing it. The requests didn't stop at first. Safira texted one night, "Hey, our payment bounced. Can you spot us until Friday?" with a laughing emoji. I stared at it. In the past, I would have sent money right away. This time, I typed 3 words. "I can't right now." No explanation. No apology. Her reply came fast. "Oh, okay. Nothing else." My mom called the next day. "You've been quiet lately. Is everything okay?" "Yes," I said. And it was. There was a pause. She wanted me to explain, to make everything comfortable. When I said nothing, she filled the space herself. "You know, Safira's under a lot of pressure." "I know," I said. And that was it. I didn't offer solutions. I didn't volunteer money. I didn't promise to fix anything. Ending the call felt wrong, like I was breaking a rule. But it felt honest. For once, I wasn't doing my old job. I was just existing. Over time, I saw how much of my life was built around being available. I kept my schedule flexible. I avoided plans. I hesitated before saying yes to chances that might take me away. Even at work, I did the same. I took extra work quietly, fixed problems behind the scenes, made sure everything ran smoothly without asking for credit. Being reliable has become my whole identity. And I was tired. One evening, sitting alone in my apartment, I opened my laptop and looked at my money. Not to see what I could give, but to see what I had. I counted it carefully. I realized this money was mine. Not theirs. Not something I could be expected to share just because I always had before. I felt a strange, warm feeling. It was like discovering a secret garden that had been under my feet all along. That night, I thought about all the times I had said yes without thinking, all the hours I had spent helping, all the money I had quietly given away. It wasn't bad to help. I liked helping sometimes. But it has become my whole life. My whole identity. And that wasn't fair to me. The next morning, I made a small rule for myself. I would only give if I truly wanted to. Not because it was expected. Not because I was always last. I would say no when I needed to. At work, I started doing the same. If someone asked me to take extra work, I thought carefully before saying yes. I still helped when it mattered, but I didn't overextend. I didn't disappear into other people's problems. At home, I kept my phone quiet. When Safira texted, I thought before replying. If I didn't feel like helping, I said, "I can't right now." No one yelled at me. No one cried. Life went on. For the first time in years, I felt free. Free to plan trips. Free to spend money on myself. Free to say yes to opportunities without thinking about what my family might need. Free to live my own life. I still loved my family. I always would. But love didn't mean losing myself. Love didn't mean always being last. I realized I could be strong in a different way. I could be strong for myself. I started small. I bought a new chair for my apartment. A comfortable one, just for me. I went to a movie I wanted to see. I stayed out late reading a book without worrying that someone would need me. And it felt good. Safira called one night. "Hey, Kaylee's. Can you help with something?" I thought about it. I didn't say yes immediately. I didn't feel guilty. I said, "Not right now. I have other plans." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Okay. I understand." That was a small moment, but it felt huge. She could handle it herself. I could handle myself. I realized my dad's words at dinner weren't cruel. They were true. And that truth gave me power. It told me I had been living a life for everyone else, but me. And now I could choose differently. I started making plans I wanted, trips I wanted, friends I wanted to see, hobbies I wanted to try. Slowly, my life filled with me again. The freedom felt strange at first. I was afraid someone would be upset. But no one yelled. No one cried. No one said I was selfish. Life just kept going. And I noticed something amazing. I was happier, calmer, stronger in a new way. I still cared for my family. I still loved them. But now I wasn't invisible. Now I wasn't always last. I wasn't disappearing into their problems. I was Kaylee's first. I started keeping a journal, writing about my days, my feelings, my dreams. I planned adventures for myself. I saved money for things I wanted. I bought books and small gifts for myself. Things I had never done before, because I was always thinking of others. The first time I booked a solo trip, I felt nervous. But I also felt proud. I was doing something for myself. Not for Saphira, not for my parents, not for Caius. For me. When the trip ended, I came back feeling alive, excited, full of ideas. I had stories to tell. I had memories that were mine. Over time, my family noticed. Saphira stopped asking me for money all the time. My mom stopped calling to check if I was handling things. My dad still expected I could help, but I had boundaries now. I said yes sometimes. I said no sometimes. And life continued. The old me would have felt guilty. The old me would have given everything and cried inside. But this new me felt calm, strong, free. And for the first time, I realized that being strong didn't mean always helping. It meant knowing when to help, and when to stand for myself. Now, I live my life differently. I am still strong, but it's a choice, not a rule. I help when I want. I say no when I need to. I care for myself. I live for myself. And that, I finally understand, is real strength. For the first time, I let myself imagine a future where I didn't have to rescue anyone. I could travel to new places. I could rest when I was tired. I could feel safe and not worry all the time. At first, it felt strange, almost selfish. I had never thought about what it would be like to think about myself first. But then I realized something important. I had been taught my whole life to believe that caring for people meant giving up my own comfort. That love meant sacrifice. That putting myself last was a good thing. But what if that wasn't true? What if always being last was not a sign of being good or mature, but just a habit? A habit that everyone had gotten used to without even thinking about it? I didn't tell anyone about these thoughts. I didn't explain myself. I didn't make announcements. I just quietly stopped leaving space in my life for emergencies that weren't mine. Slowly, I could feel something inside me change. Not outside, nothing dramatic had happened yet, but inside, I felt different. I wasn't standing in the same place, waiting for someone to call me. I was stepping back. I was watching. I was paying attention. I had no idea when my family would notice, or how quickly they would test if I really meant it this time. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon, just as I was closing my laptop after a long meeting. I almost didn't pick up. Not because I was angry, but because I recognized the number and the feeling that always came with it. My chest tightened, the same way it did when something bad was about to happen. Kaylee's, my mom said the moment I answered. Her voice was tight, rushed, and controlled, like she was already upset before she even spoke. We need to talk. I leaned back in my chair. About what? I asked. There was a pause. Too long. Can you come by this weekend? She said. It's important. She didn't explain, because she never did when the explanation was big or serious. I'll think about it, I said. That wasn't the answer she expected. In the past, I would have already been checking flight times, rearranging my schedule, and asking what I could do to help. This time, I let the silence sit between us. Okay, she said finally. Just please. When I arrived at my parents' house 2 days later, it felt different before I even stepped inside. The driveway was crowded. Saphira's car was there. Caius's too. The front door opened slowly, like the house itself was nervous about what was about to happen. Inside, the living room felt heavier than I remembered. Stacks of envelopes covered the coffee table. Bills, notices, papers with official logos and red stamps that made my stomach tighten. No one was sitting comfortably. My dad stood near the window, arms crossed. My mom hovered near the couch. Saphira sat stiffly, staring at the floor. Caius avoided my eyes completely. No one asked how I was. My mom started talking right away. Words came fast, spilling out before they could even be organized. There were some delays. A few decisions didn't work out the way we expected. It's temporary, she said. Saphira jumped in. It's not as bad as it looks. We just need time. My dad cleared his throat. They talked around the problem, careful not to say it directly. It was like saying it clearly would make it real. I listened quietly, hands folded in my lap. I noticed how familiar this felt. The tension, the build-up, the moment right before they all turned to me. And then they did. "You're in a stable place," my dad said finally. "You don't have kids," my mom added. "You can handle this better than most," Safira said softly. There it was. The assumption dressed up as logic. The unspoken agreement they had already made before I even walked through the door. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not panic, but clarity. Sharp and calm. I asked one question. "What's the plan if I don't help?" The room went silent. My mom's face fell. "Kaylee's, don't say that," she said quietly. "I'm serious," I said evenly. "What happens if I don't step in?" No one answered. Safira looked panicked now. My dad frowned, like he was trying to solve a math problem that no longer made sense. Caius shifted uncomfortably near the door. "That's not fair," my mom said quietly. "We're family," I said. "I know." And for the first time, knowing didn't automatically mean sacrificing. "I need time," I said, standing up to understand everything. They nodded too quickly, grateful and certain. They thought time meant I was calculating how much I could give. As I drove away that evening, the house shrinking in my rearview mirror, I realized something unsettling. They weren't scared of losing everything. They were scared of losing me as the solution. And for the first time in my life, I didn't rush back to reassure them. I let them sit with it because whatever happened next would prove whether I was still last or whether I had finally stepped out of the line entirely. That night, I didn't sleep. Lying in my childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling I had memorized years ago, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Sadness, anger, and something steadier underneath it all. Resolve. Not the loud kind. The kind that settles in once you finally stop arguing with yourself. For the first time, I admitted the truth I'd been avoiding. I wasn't being asked to help. I was expecting to be rescued. By morning, I knew I couldn't walk back into that house the same way I always had, empty-handed except for reassurance, ready to absorb the damage so everyone else could breathe again. Instead, I made 2 appointments. One with a therapist, one with a lawyer. I needed clarity, not comfort. When I returned the following weekend, the house felt different. Quieter. Tense. The bills were still there, but now stacked neatly, as if being organized could make them less scary. My parents were already seated at the table. Safira sat beside them, hands clenched in her lap. Caius hovered near the doorway, unsure if he belonged in the room where the future was about to be decided. No one smiled when I walked in. "We're really glad you came," my mom said. Her voice was soft, careful, the way I recognized instantly. I sat down slowly and placed my bag at my feet. "Let's talk," I said. My dad launched into explanations. Caius at shifts, bad timing, decisions made with hope, and not enough room for mistakes. He spoke like a man presenting a case he hoped confidence might win. Safira nodded along, adding details about stress, about the kids, about how none of this was supposed to happen. Eventually the words ran out. That's when my mom leaned forward. "We just need help getting through this part," she said. "Once things stabilize." "How much?" I asked. The question landed hard. My dad hesitated. My mom blinked. Safira inhaled sharply, then said a number carefully. I nodded slowly. "And after that, what's the plan?" I asked. "What do you mean?" my dad asked. "I mean, what changes so this doesn't happen again?" I asked. The air shifted. "Kaylee's," my mom said, her voice tightening. "This isn't the time to interrogate us." I nodded. "Then it's not the time for me to write a check." Safira sat up straighter. "We're family. This isn't about plans. It's about helping." "Helping who?" I asked. She looked at me like the answer was obvious. "Us," she said. I glanced around the table. "And who's helping me?" No one spoke. My dad leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You're in a different position," he said. "You're single. You're stable. You can afford to step in." There it was. The logic I had heard my entire life. "I can afford to step in," I said carefully, "because I've spent years building my life as if no one would ever catch me if I fell." My mom's eyes filled with tears. "We didn't know you felt like that." "You did," I asked. "You just didn't think it mattered." The silence that followed wasn't confusion. It was uncomfortable. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder, sliding it onto the table between us. The movement was deliberate. Every eye followed it. "This is what I'm willing to do," I said. "And this is how." My dad opened the folder, scanning the first page, then the second. His jaw tightened. My mom leaned over his shoulder. Safira's face was drained of color. "This is a loan," my dad said flatly. "Yes," I replied with clear terms. Safira shook her head. "Why are there conditions?" "Because this isn't an emergency donation," I said. "It's structured help." My mom's voice trembled. "You don't trust us." "I trust patterns," I said quietly. "And this pattern has been in place my entire life." I explained the terms slowly. Assets sold before any money changed hands, spending documented, no new financial commitments without proof of sustainability, mandatory family therapy, a written agreement protecting my credit, my name, and my future. My dad pushed the folder away. "This is cold," he said. "This is how banks treat people." I nodded once. "Then treat me like a bank. Because when you needed emotional support, I was family. When you needed money, I was infrastructure." Safira's eyes filled with tears. "So you're punishing us now?" I shook my head. "I'm stopping the punishment of me." "If you don't help," she whispered, "we lose everything?" I held her gaze. "If I help without boundaries, I lose everything I've built." The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. My mom reached for my hand, then hesitated, like she wasn't sure she still had the right. "We never meant to make you feel last," she said. "But you did," I said. And for the first time, saying it didn't mean I had to give up. My dad stared at the folder. "So this is it," he said. "Sign or sink." "No," I corrected him calmly. "This will grow or repeat." Time stretched. Minutes passed. My parents whispered to each other in low, frantic tones. Safira wiped her cheeks. Caius paced behind her. For the first time in my life, I didn't rush to fill the silence. I waited. Finally, my dad looked up. "We need time," he said. I stood up and picked up my bag. "You have 24 hours, I said. Safira's head shot up, her eyes wide and full of surprise. That's it. That's it," I told her again, trying to make sure she understood. "Tomorrow I'll come back. Either we go forward like this, or we don't go forward at all." As I reached the door, my mom called my name. Her voice was shaking, almost breaking. "If we say no, are you going to walk away?" she asked, her eyes filling with worry. I paused, my hand on the doorknob. I looked at them all, feeling something strange, fear, love, and a little sadness all at once. "I'm not walking away from you," I said softly. "I'm walking toward myself." With that, I left them sitting there, frozen. Not because I had taken something from them, but because for the first time in my life, I hadn't given myself away. I hadn't let them take my energy, my feelings, or my choices. I was finally choosing myself. The next afternoon, they signed the papers. There was no cheering, no happy faces, and no big sighs of relief. They just quietly accepted that the rules they had lived by for so many years were gone. No speeches, no last-minute begging. My dad read every page slowly, like maybe if he stared long enough, the words would magically change. My mom sat beside him, hands folded in her lap, her eyes red but dry. She had cried all her tears the night before, leaving none for today. Safira watched the pen move across the page like it was writing something permanent into her life, because it really was permanent. When the final signature was done, the room didn't feel lighter. It felt open, almost exposed. My dad slid the folder back to me without looking up. "We'll follow the rules," he said in a flat voice. "I know," I replied. That's when I felt it. Not victory. Not happiness. But relief. The heavy weight I had carried for years wasn't put on anyone else. I wasn't passing it off or hiding it. I was simply setting it down, and it felt amazing. The changes started almost immediately. Within the first week, things that had been ignored suddenly mattered. Subscriptions were canceled. Credit cards were cut up. Things we owned were listed for sale. It wasn't pretend. It wasn't maybe later. It was real and practical. For the first time, money wasn't just an idea in our heads. It had limits. Safira had the hardest time adjusting. She called me one night, her voice tight and shaky. "I didn't realize how much you were covering," she said. I nodded silently and replied, "I know." She waited for me to comfort her, to soften it, but I didn't. I had learned that helping everyone all the time wasn't the same as being responsible. 2 weeks later, we started family therapy. The first session was quiet but painful. My dad spoke carefully, like he was afraid to say the wrong thing. My mom apologized repeatedly, but never finished a sentence. Safira sat stiff, arms crossed, looking defensive. The therapist asked a simple question. "What happens when Chloe doesn't step in?" No one answered. That silence said more than any argument ever had. It made everyone stop and think. Over the next few sessions, patterns began to appear. Things we had never named before now had names. I realized how my being fine all the time became an excuse for everyone else. My independence was mistaken for endless capacity. Being the reliable one slowly erased my right to need anything at all. I listened more than I spoke, not because I had forgiven everything, but because I no longer needed anyone to hear me to feel real. Outside the sessions, life changed. Caius found work, not because things suddenly improved, but because there was no longer a soft cushion beneath him. My parents lowered their expectations before they lowered anything else, and that alone changed every conversation. They stopped calling with urgency. They stopped implying things. They stopped assuming things. When my mom asked how I was, she waited for the answer. When my dad spoke to me, he thought carefully about his words. Sapphira looked at me differently now. Not with superiority, not with expectation, but with uncertainty. For the first time, I wasn't the safety net quietly stretched beneath everyone else's life. I was standing on my own ground. The family wasn't fully healed, not completely or perfectly, but it was honest in a way it had never been before. The cost of that honesty was high, but it was finally shared by everyone. When I went back to my apartment, the quiet felt different. Not empty. Not lonely. Free. For years, silence had made me anxious. Silence meant someone might need something from me, and I wasn't responding fast enough. Silence meant a problem could be forming somewhere, and I wasn't there to soften it. Now the quiet felt earned. I slept through the night for the first time in months. My phone stayed face down on the nightstand, and when it buzzed, my chest didn't tighten automatically. I wasn't bracing anymore. I wasn't calculating how much it would cost me to be needed. Work changed too. I stopped volunteering for extra responsibilities that weren't mine. I asked for clarity instead of absorbing chaos. When my manager thanked me for stepping up, I said, "I'd like that reflected in my role." The words surprised both of us, but they stayed. I planned things without checking anyone else's calendar. Trips I had postponed for years. Weekends that belonged only to me. Goals that didn't include an exit strategy in case someone else fell apart. When my mom called now, it was different. "How are you really?" she asked one evening. I told her, and she listened without redirecting the conversation or adding Sapphira's stress as context. Sapphira sent photos of the kids. No captions about money. No quiet hints. Just pictures. Once she added, "We're figuring things out." I believed her. The biggest change wasn't theirs. It was mine. I stopped feeling responsible for keeping the illusion that everything was fine. I didn't rush to smooth over discomfort or fill silence with reassurance. I let people sit with the consequences of their choices, even when it was uncomfortable to watch. I realized something that took me a long time to learn. Being kind doesn't mean being available at your own expense. Being strong doesn't mean being endlessly flexible. Being family doesn't mean being sacrificed. One evening, sitting alone with a cup of tea, I caught myself smiling. Not because something good had happened, but because nothing bad had happened. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting to be chosen. I had already chosen myself. And that choice didn't make me smaller. It made me free. For a long time, I believed being last was a challenge. If I tried harder, if I gave more, if I stayed quieter, I thought eventually someone would notice. I was wrong. Being last was never a position to fight for. It was a signal, one I ignored for years, that I was standing in a place that was slowly erasing me. What changed my life wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge. It was clear. The moment my dad said it out loud, "You're always last," he didn't insult me. He freed me. Because once the truth was spoken, I no longer had to pretend I didn't understand it. Setting boundaries didn't destroy my family. It revealed it. It showed me who was uncomfortable when the rules changed, who respected structure, and who only felt close to me when I was useful. And it showed me something else, too. Something quieter but stronger. I could love people without disappearing for them. I could help without being consumed. I could walk away from a role without walking away from myself.